You have to be flexible and you have to be willing to compromise, I think, is a big thing, especially if you're moving into somebody's already established office like I did. When we first started, it was not exactly the smoothest thing, and there were a lot of things that we talked about and disagreed on, but compromising and working through that was a big piece. And so how much are you willing to bend when you go into that space? How much is the other person willing to bend? Like, really, how flexible are you? I think is a big piece.
You're on a mission, and you just need more people to know about it. And whether you're brand new to marketing or a seasoned pro, we are all looking for answers to make marketing decisions with purpose. I'm Monica Pitts, a techie, crafty business owner, mom, and aerial dancer who solves communication challenges through technology. This podcast is all about digging in and going digital. I'll share my marketing know-how and business experience from almost 20 years of misadventures. I'll be your backup dancer, so you can stop doubting and get moving towards marketing with purpose. Hello, and welcome back to Marketing with Purpose. I'm your host, Monica Pitts, and today we're tackling a topic that hits close to home for many of us, quite literally. Working from home with your spouse and managing to not go nuts, get your work done, and stay married. Yay! I personally do not know how to do this. When my husband and I worked from home, now when we work from home, we occupy separate spaces and we treat the kitchen like our water cooler. So we gather in the kitchen. But my guests today, Tyler and Christi Ernst, are another story. They have been remote working from the same room for the past 4 years, and they still like each other. Yeah, I know. What a success story, right? So Tyler is our lead developer and co-art director at MayeCreate, and he's been working remotely since 2014. When he and his wife, Christi, moved to Belton, Missouri, it's near Kansas City for her nursing career. So yeah, I was hoping that we could just start this off by first having the two of you introduce yourselves, and then we'll take a trip back in time to uncover all of this co-working wisdom that you've gathered through this work at home journey. So I want to know, where did you meet? How long have you been together? How long have you been married? So that way people know, what's your story? Tell me.
You want to start?
Tyler, you can go. You're better at storytelling.
Fair enough. Well, technically, if you want to ask when we first met, it'd be middle school, but we weren't friends until senior year of high school.
I don't think I knew who you were other than the rat tail kid in middle school, so we can call it that. One of the kids with the rat tail.
But mainly band, I would say. That's when it's freshman year of band, probably marching band. When you start to really get to know everyone.
And you guys, you went to college together, right? Did you guys date in college?
We did. We started dating freshman year of college. So I actually went to the Art Institute my freshman year, and she went to UCM. And I was like, wow, private school sucks. And and then she was like, well, you can transfer schools. And I hadn't even thought that was an option. And then I was like, oh, I can do that. Well, cool. I'm going to go over there. And so we both went to UCM.
And when did you guys get married?
2023.
2023, man.
So 11 years ago this summer.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Kind of makes me feel old, but awesome all at the same time. Okay, so.
Well,
we feel old too, it's okay.
If you think about it, I only worked for MayeCreate for a year before, as a not married person.
Now, when you started at MayeCreate, did I have kids yet?
You had Ellis.
Okay.
And Stacy was pregnant with her first.
Man, you got to live through all of that with us.
Uh-huh.
That's incredible. Thank you for that, Tyler.
You're welcome.
Now, okay, so one other thing I wanted to tell people about, because this is a really cool and interesting fact about you guys. So I told everybody that Tyler's my co-art director and he's our lead developer, but you guys you have a really interesting hobby. We say at MayeCreate, we're 2 ticks away from being a full-blown circus, So tell everybody what your guys' hobby is. What do you guys do when you're not at work?
Well, I think the biggest thing that Monica's alluding to is that we're both competitive power lifters, and so we like to lift heavy circles for fun. It's about the best way to put it. And not just like some heavy circles, but a lot of heavy circles. Like my best bench press is something that everybody always talks about. Like, what do you bench, bro? I bench 275 pounds at least once. Look at me go.
You've done it twice now.
Yeah, I have. No, 275 is just once. 265 I've done like 3 or 4 times. But yeah, powerlifting is something that we do together. So not only do we work from home together most days of the week, and we live together in the same home, but we go to the same gym at the same time and train together too. So there's a lot of togetherness, being like we share that same hobby. So yeah. That's one of our big circus things. I guess you could also say another circus thing is I've started to dabble into the sourdough realm of things. Yes.
I was going to ask about your sourdough.
Yeah, I've got some starter in the fridge and I've got some discard in the fridge I want to make some English muffins with later. So yeah.
I've heard that sourdough is actually like better for you than normal bread. Like it's supposed to digest better. Is that true?
It's a lot like sauerkraut or like fermented foods, that sort of thing. It's got all that like good gut bacteria in there. So it helps your good gut health and that sort of thing. That's why it's better for you.
We're like reverse hipsters for sourdough. We came into that trend way later because when everyone else was making sourdough in 2020, we were making pizza dough.
So, Tyler, I know that when you both decided to move for Christi's jobs, originally, like you thought that you were going to work in an office. You were going to move to Kansas City. You were going to work in an office. You were looking for other jobs. We were devastated at MayeCreate. And then you decided to stay on and work remotely for MayeCreate. So that was a big transition. So I want to kind of start there with the remote work theme. Like, how was that? Was that a hard decision? Like, how was it at first?
I got a lot of questions from people because it wasn't a normal thing then. And so like when we started looking at moving, I started looking at jobs, like you said, and then like nothing was really panning out. And I remember the moment I was standing in your office and I was talking about it. And we were talking and I was like, I'm like freaking out right now. You know, we're moving in a couple weeks and nothing's panned out yet. And I don't have a job. Like that's a little freaky. And you're like, well, most of what you do is online. You can just keep working for us. And I was like, I had not thought about that. And you're like, I hadn't either till just now. We were like, let's do it. Why not? You know? And so it was a little frightening because it was like, there isn't really a norm for this. And like, I remember my uncle asked me, he was like, well, how long do you think that gig's going to last? And I was like, I don't know. You know, I really don't. It's gonna last until I can hopefully find something else. And then lo and behold, 10 years later, it lasted pretty well, I would say.
Well, we had a trial period at first and we like checked in a bunch because it isn't for everybody. Like working from home is not for everybody. Like I don't do it super well. I can do it for a while, but after a few months, I kind of just need to leave the house and have to have a reason to put on real clothes to feel good about myself. Not everybody needs that though.
I mean,
so
the gym definitely helps with that. The gym is a good excuse to leave the house, 4 or 5 times a week. And that helped. When we first moved to Lenexa and we weren't super into lifting, there were points where it'd be like Friday night and I'd be like, I haven't left the house in 4 days. We need to go do something.
Not only had you not left the house, you hadn't seen sunlight because you were working out of the basement in the a little corner, and you would like come upstairs for lunch and then go back down and eat your lunch in the basement. So it was just you and Sully chilling out down there. Yeah,
and if it was winter, the sun wasn't or like just coming up as I was going downstairs, and then by the time I came upstairs after work, it was down already.
Is there anything? I mean, you've spent more of your career now working from home than you have in an office. So is there anything that you miss about being in an office environment at this point?
I mean, when you work somewhere long enough, like I have at MayeCreate, like, you guys are actual genuine friends. So I miss seeing people like that in person. But also like, I'm so much more productive when I'm at home that like, when you do it long enough, you get into a rhythm of like this is how I work. This is my day. And I don't know. I don't know if I could ever really go back to an office, quite frankly.
There's lots of distractions. I do miss you popping my back for me, though.
Fair.
I have to go to a chiropractor for that now. Much more expensive. Now, Christi, you're a healthcare professional. Tell us what you do and how you ended up working from home. How'd that happen?
So I guess it kind of starts when we moved to Lenexa. I worked in a cath lab. So I worked around like cardiology outpatients, essentially busy, hustle, bustle, worked a job where I carried a pager, worked a job where I had to be within a range of a certain hospital. So I worked there for just shy of 5 years, but at the end of that 5 years, man, was I feeling all of the extra hours I worked? Was I feeling, I like to call myself an extra burnt piece of toast at the end of that job. It was very emotionally exhausting, very physically exhausting, looked for something different. So then I started working basically within the healthcare IT space. And when I started there, I actually started working from home 1 day a week, but it was mostly in the office. And that started in 2018. So I worked in an office and worked from home 1 day a week for a couple years until March of 2020, where the transition to work from home happened and everybody was forced to work from home. So I had been kind of used to like working from home once a day, but let's be honest, when you work from home once a day, it's not the same sort of situation. You're still going back to the office for the other days. You honestly kind of use that day to make your appointments, like your doctor's appointments, to kind of flex your time around a little bit. And I worked from the recliner. So that's where I worked. I did my work that way, or I'd go work at a coffee shop. But then when the pandemic happened and everybody was forced to work from home, at first it was a weird transition because you didn't know how long that was going to last. Like the initial thought was, and it was really weird even because we were potentially moving to a new office location. So it was like, do I take all my stuff out of my desk in these moments or do I not? And so I actually left a few things at the office, but I took most of like my personal items with me when we got the email to start working remotely. And initially it was supposed to just be for a couple weeks. So I thought, okay, cool. I can work from my chair for a couple weeks. No big deal. This big recliner had, I could use my mouse. My job was very easy to do that from. And then, that 2 weeks goes by and you get another email and it's like, we're not going to return to office until the middle of the summer. And then you get another email and another email. Basically, the summer of 2020 was when I decided, okay, I need an actual desk to work at. I'm moving in. So I moved into the office with Tyler. I don't think he was very excited about that initially, but I was like, I need a hard space to at least work, to put this extra monitor up. And to work from time to time. I think we tried me working at like the dining room table, essentially where I'm sitting right now, for a little bit, but it just wasn't the same. And so I got a desk. You can see it's right behind Tyler, but, and then we transitioned to a sit to stand desk even. So, I kind of just made myself at home and moved right on in. And, that was kind of a shock for Tyler at first.
I'm a creature of habit. So like it was like you're moving things around in here in my office. That's now our office. And okay, I guess you're gonna do that, and I guess I'm gonna be okay with it.
Well, you're really laid back. Like you're about as low drama as they come, and I'm sure that that's not all the time, Christi. But with me, he's it's kind of like my kids go to school and they're like really functional at school and they come home and they're like a complete sideshow. I feel like it's the same with spouses versus bosses, right? But so like what were some of the thoughts going through your head as Christi's moving into your office that's like your space in the house?
So one of the big points of contention that we had to work through, and this is going to sound so stupid, but I had like a schedule for I listen to this podcast on this day, this podcast on this day, this one on this way, and these times because it's when they release. And she was like, I can't focus when you're listening to those. And I was like, that's too bad, I guess. I don't know.
So you're missing the point that you don't listen to anything through a set of headphones. Right. And so everything is through speakers that are loud. we didn't really discover that I wasn't I wasn't able to focus while podcasts were playing. I probably didn't realize that till for like 3 solid months. So I realized I was like, it took a long time, but I was like searching the internet, scrolling social media. Like my brain did not like listening to podcasts and I didn't realize it, but I tolerated it for so long simply because I had to.
You know what, Christi, I can't do it either. So like before we came on, I said, hey, okay, so my office is in like 120-year-old building and it's over the top of a bar that opens at 2 and it's 1:00, so sometimes the people come in and have really loud discussions below me, but somehow that doesn't really bother me because it's like weird muffled ambient noise. But if I have music with words on or a podcast rolling, with a podcast rolling, I cannot work. With music with words on, I can design, but I can't write at all. Like I can't write because my brain just latches onto the words. And so I literally have a whole playlist that's filled with songs with no words on them for when I have to write. So what I'm saying is I feel you really hard there because I could not have done it like at all. I would have been erupting.
Well, and so what ended up happening is eventually we figured out, the certain set of circumstances that it was like, okay, well, this isn't working here. That's why I have a nice pair of headphones now, because I was like, all right, well, I'm not going to not listen to these because I really enjoy them and they help me focus. So I got a nice pair of headphones and then, just figured out the schedule a little differently for when I listen to them.
Are there other bumpy patches that you guys had to figure out? I mean, especially working in the same room. That's a lot.
He didn't talk about the desk. So Tyler has a tendency that things have certain places and they have to go certain ways. My desk overlaps our window a little bit in the office space, and that drove him absolutely insane when I was ordering this desk. Initially, he said, it's going to overlap the window. It's too long. I said, well, I need the space. Like, I need to be able to have my monitor and my laptop and, space to have it. It's not a big desk. It's very small. But the fact that it overlaps the window drove him insane. He wanted it to sit to where it angled against the wall, but I wanted to see out the window. And at that time, we had this big, beautiful tree that blossomed every spring. And so it was just nice to be able to see out of a window, especially coming from that clinical background where I worked in a literal lead room. You didn't see the sunlight at all. So it was just nice to be able to have my window in my office or our office. It was our space, not just his space. So that transition was a little bit much too.
I think it's a lot of the like little stupid bickery arguments that you have as a married couple, except for about a room that you spend your entire day in. Was what it came down to.
But you guys are good communicators. You guys have been like friends and married, obviously, for a long time now, which is kind of where I was going for at the beginning here when I asked you guys how long you've been together. So you know how to communicate with one another and how to respect each other's triggers, ticks.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so is there anything that you miss about being in an office, Christi, that you don't feel like you get working at home with Tyler?
So honestly, I actually am in a new role that's actually hybrid. So I am in an office 2 to 3 days a week. With that being said, it's not the same going back to that office because most of my team is still remote. So I don't get to go to office and collaborate with those individuals, have whiteboard sessions where you talk. Those are the things that I really enjoyed about being in person, having that face-to-face. Now, obviously you can meet over video chat, but a lot of people within healthcare IT that you'll find, especially individuals that are behind the scenes, so engineers, even people that work on the solutions side of things, don't turn their cameras on. So it's a lot of cameras off. And so you don't even get to see facial reactions to what you're saying. So that can make it hard. There were a couple meetings when I worked at my previous company that we always had cameras on. It was super laid back. But for most of it, the cameras were off. So currently, sometimes I feel like I might be in an office, but I'm still working remotely, but I still had to drive somewhere every day sort of thing. One thing I don't like about working in the office, other than the fact that it feels like I'm working remotely sometimes at the office, is the drive. For some people, I think driving to and from an office is nice, but because of where we live, I have to take almost a different way to and from work every day. And sometimes I take different ways home from work, depending on traffic. Like I have to ask Google which way to, guide me home, because one way could take an hour and the other one could take 30 minutes. So, yeah. But what I have found that I really enjoyed working from home that is different is I get to do, like, I can cook my lunch. Like I don't have to worry or stress about prepping my meals for the week as much on Sunday night. Like if I didn't get the opportunity to do that, then I can like grill a steak during my lunch break and prep my meals for the week during my lunch break right at home. It's really nice.
Yeah. Or unload the dishwasher. That's what I found. Because now I like deal with it before and after dinner, which is just one more nighttime task. And I am nodding my head over here. I also, when I work from home, really like I can make eggs for lunch. That makes me very happy.
Well, and back to our hobby. When you're lifting, you have a decently specific diet. Not like we're not super strict like bodybuilders or anything, but it is like I need higher protein, higher carbs. So like usually that involves cooking specific things and prepping them ahead of time so you don't have to cook that stuff. And if you're at home, like I'll start rice at 11 o'clock so it's ready to eat whenever I'm ready for lunch at noon.
So I got to know, you guys both have meetings, right? So how do you handle meetings? How does that work? Because I'm in one space with my marketing assistant sometimes, but she doesn't take meetings unless she's on the meeting with me. So there's not like people's voices jockeying. And I remember when Mike and I worked from the basement, and Mike is on the phone all day long with his job and he talks really loud. He would have to go into the laundry room and shut the door and have all of his professional conversations from the laundry room because no one could hear anything except for Mike talking. So how do you guys do it? I got to know.
So this is one of the big things that I just kind of took upon myself. So Tyler works from a desktop computer. He's at a desk. There's no mobility to that. He's just kind of stuck in the office. There's sure, he could maybe take some of his calls from a phone, but most of his stuff, like he's sharing his screen. He's, working with clients and, rearranging their websites for them. Whereas I have a laptop, so I am super mobile. So that's just one thing I started from the beginning was coming to the living room and taking my meetings. I used to work from the living room, so I'll just take my meetings from the living room. Now, previous roles that I had, I didn't have as many meetings, so it wasn't as big of a deal. But like today already, I've spent most of my day out in the living room because I've been in meetings all day. Now, there are some instances where I enjoy having my second screen, like if I'm presenting on a call. But most of the time I don't necessarily need it. But if I do need it, that's where I'm like, hey, Tyler, just so you know, I have to, I'm going to take this meeting from the office. And so we just kind of respect each other's boundaries. Big communication there. I like to share my calendar with him every day too. So even if it's just a screenshot of like, hey, these are the meetings I have all day. Like this is my schedule. It's just so that way we can kind of that way we don't interrupt each other's meetings. Or there's been a couple instances where I've been working out in the living room and I walk back to the office and I'm like, oh, I forgot he was in a meeting and he's got his camera on. I'm like, uh-oh, and then I turn around.
That was something I was going to mention earlier. Sometimes I think people think we're weird at MayeCreate because we always have our cameras on all the time. And that's not super normal. But I told Christi because she asked me once and I was like, well, we just kind of did when I started working remotely, because again, no one was doing it. We just kind of did that, and now we just keep doing that.
It is unacceptable. I'm going to sound like a real boss here. It is unacceptable to me when I have a meeting with an employee and they do not have their video on. Nope. Not going to work. I got to be able to look you in the eye because some people, their nonverbal cues are really loud. And so there's people where I tell them instructions and they're like, yeah, but their face says no. It says, I do not understand what you're talking about. And I can tell immediately even through video, that you don't understand what I'm talking about. And so that means that we need to go to plan B, and I'm like drawing pictures and holding it up to the camera so you understand. Like, I would say like Rebecca can be was one of those people early on until she learned how to really ask questions and see her own cues when she doesn't understand something. But like, I can't tell if you're just saying yeah.
Yeah, it's way better in roughs meetings when clients won't turn on their cameras, which like it happens. That's just the norm sometimes. But when you get a client that won't turn on their camera, it's like I can't tell if you're happy about the changes I'm making right now or not. Like I genuinely have no idea because you're not talking either. So
well, it's also a liability because you don't know if they're actually paying attention.
Yeah, that too.
They could be checking their email, and if they're like Christi or I'm assuming, Christi, you're probably the same way. I could pay attention to like one thing at a time, any more than one thing at a time, and I'm not going to remember anything that happened with one of the things. And so there's not a whole lot of multitasking that goes on in my universe. Like,
I can multitask, but if I'm trying to do something else at the same time, say pay attention to a meeting, most of the time I don't actually hear what's going on. Or I could be trying to pay attention to said meeting and I still don't hear what's going on. Sometimes it's very interesting. But
I always wonder if that's really multitasking or if that's just me ignoring something and doing something else. But yeah, I do think I wrote that down. Cameras on is definitely a trick for like remote work. And I liked to, Christi, your comment earlier about like going from not like sitting in the recliner to being at the kitchen table to setting up a desk to having a raise and lower desk, because having a work environment that actually works for you is pretty big. It doesn't matter whether you're at home or at an office. You need something that works for you, and it's not the same for everyone. I know when Tyler first started working from home, we got the raise and lower desks at MayeCreate. And then he was like, I don't want a raise and lower desk. I want a great chair, which he's sitting in it right now.
Yeah.
And so we bought him a baller chair, that costs the same as a standing desk.
She was like, we're getting everyone standing desk. Do you want one? And I was like, I have a 6 foot wide giant, this thing's so heavy, wooden desk that I got off Craigslist for $20. And it's like the best thing ever. And I was like, I really like my desk, actually. So, yeah.
So, all right. So the other thing that I feel like we haven't quite touched on yet is, okay, so let's say that somebody comes to you and they're like, hey, I've never worked from home with my spouse before, or such and so is going to start working from home. What would you say to them? What are some questions you might ask them to see if they're going to explode themselves? Because like, that's really what we're all guarding against, right? Yeah. Is the relationship explosion. Like, it's not going to work. You can be like Mike and I and just work in separate areas of the house.
100%. Yes, you can totally do. You basically work in an office without working in an office when you're doing that.
Yeah. But with your spouse, where your filters are lower. And so what would you ask them?
I think,
are you flexible?
Yeah.
You have to be flexible and you have to be willing to compromise, I think, is a big thing. Especially if you're moving into somebody's already established office, like I did. It was, like when we first started, it was not exactly the smoothest thing. And there were a lot of things that we talked about and disagreed on, but compromising and working through that was a big piece. And so how much are you willing to bend when you go into that space? How much is the other person willing to bend? Like, really, how flexible are you? I think is a big piece.
Yeah. And then communication off of that is like, how well can you talk about those things that you're willing to bend about?
One thing that you guys mentioned earlier was, can you work in the kitchen together?
Yeah.
Oh, 100%. So Tyler's my sous chef in the kitchen. I'm the pickiest one, so I kind of take lead. And that's just something that we've learned as we've been together for so long. Tyler's cooked meals and I haven't been happy with them. I personally think I'm the better cook, but he's taken on that role of like cleaning up after me because I'm not the greatest of cleaning up as I go when I cook. And I've done I'll do like the nitty gritty, like making sure the steaks don't cook too long on the grill, or making sure the air fryer is set to the right time, that sort of thing. So I think if you can work together in the kitchen and cook a meal together, whether that's, when I say cook a meal, that includes doing the dishes. Like, are you doing the dishes as the other one's cleaning, or cleaning the island off, as that sort of thing? Can you work together in the kitchen? Then you can probably work together in an office.
I would agree with that. I mean, so we're actually designing a new kitchen. Mike and I are, and I'm always the one at the sink. Okay. So I'm the Tyler. I'll cut stuff. Same. And and he's always in front of the stove. And I'm like, no. The stove and the sink cannot be opposite one another. Like, the plans came back and there was a sink in the island with a stove right behind it. And I'm like, I want my own space. Does this give you some insight into our universe? I'm like, I want my own sink with my own dishwasher next to it. And then over there, you can have your beautiful range, but it cannot be close to my sink.
See, I just do a lot of booty bumping. That's what would happen in our house, is like, you just bump into each other over and over again. So
I understand from an aesthetic standpoint.
We're powerlifters. We're not small people.
Yeah, I do understand from an aesthetic standpoint why people put things together like that. But then So we like to have our own space at the Pitts household, and it's totally okay. I wonder too. So this is something you guys haven't mentioned before. Now, I feel like both of you guys are very respectful of each other's careers and work roles. Does that make sense? Like, I always have felt like you guys are pretty equal in that, and you sacrifice for each other, especially as Tyler has grown into his role. I wonder if it would be challenging to share a workspace with your spouse if they felt like their role was superior to your role, and then it would be like butting heads all the time. Does that make sense? Because I remember when Mike was like at his job initially, and it was like he had the ability to make way more money than I did. And so like it was our agreement that any doctor's appointment I took the kids to, anytime they were sick, I stayed at home with them, because I knew that he was the one that could make the most money. And so I was going to like take that hit for us. I wonder how that would go down if you were sharing space, like when meetings came up. And
I feel like that could be really hard, because it'd be like, well, I'm more important, so I should be able to use the office for my meetings first. Like, for us, it's literally just a functional thing. Like she said, I have a desktop. Like, it just doesn't work. I'm not going to carry it into the kitchen every time there's a meeting. But
and I think you have to prioritize. I think you have to prioritize like what the purpose of that meeting. So I think obviously one thing I thought about as we were talking is we kind of almost have like a scrum, is how we call it in like the IT world, where we talk about what we have for the day. Like, Tyler will tell me he has this meeting at 2:00, or I just send him my whole calendar list of meetings. And so we kind of get a day plan of like what each other's day looks like, so we can communicate with each other. And like, based on that too, for me, like, it's all about what type of meeting it is. What layer of meeting is it? So when I was in my previous role, I did a lot of I did some presentations for clients. And so I made sure that those meetings were held in the office, because I liked having 2 screens. And that's essentially how we prioritize things. Are these meetings that you can take from your computer, or like even from a leadership perspective? So like if Tyler has a one-on-one, or if he has a review with one of his peers, then I give him that privacy in the office, because I don't want to be in there. That kind of is also like the HIPAA part of the nurse in me too, is respecting that privacy of the other individual by me not being in there. And same with me, when I would have one-on-ones with my team and individuals, I would always take them out here, so that way he wasn't in the room, respecting their privacy as well. So you kind of have to look at each meeting and decide from there, like, especially if both people are mobile, then you just kind of have to, prioritize it that way.
I do feel like, though, Christi, I always value your opinion. And so there are some times where I'm really glad that you're in the room, because like, we like having an outsider's opinion is really good, especially since you're like in a more corporate environment. And there are a lot of times where Stacey and I will be having a conversation about stuff, even with Tyler, and we'll be like, we need to go ask Mike, my husband, or Ryan, her husband, because they both work in corporate. How do you handle this over there? Because we don't freaking know. We're just making crap up as we go over here. And so I'm not like offended when you're in the room because I'm like, haha, maybe she heard. Like, hey, tap Christi on the shoulder and ask her.
I was gonna say, there's sometimes when it's like, I don't know if I have an opinion on this. Hey, what do you think?
And I'll be completely transparent. Sometimes something will come up that you guys are talking about, and I'll like Slack Tyler real fast and be like, hey, this might work for you guys. Just on the side. So that way it's like I'm kind of listening to what you're talking about, but not completely. So
that was something I was gonna say earlier on the communication front, is we actually have a Slack channel with just the two of us in it, that like, it was like, let's just do this. And because I'm on Slack all the time, you guys used to use Slack, you don't anymore, but it was like, we're both on Slack, let's just make a new channel and use that, which feels weird using that to communicate in the house when you're both there, but at the same time, it's so useful.
I put Mike on Slack too. I'm like, this texting back and forth all day does not work for me. If you need me during the workday, you need to be on Slack. This is where I'm at. It's so much easier. I like just don't get on text during work. I only Slack. Right. So if you want me, you should Slack me. It's better.
Well, and if you don't have access to Slack per se, I think Slack is a free for so many users because we created like our own family, but even like Google Chat, you can use that and you can add that to your taskbar at the bottom. And that was a great tool that we both used for a long time because that was before you guys were even on Slack. We used Google Chat. The two of us did. So
well, I have it installed on my phone too. So like,
right.
I get the messages when I need them. And it's just, it's better.
Not that this is a commercial for Slack, but it's pretty great.
It is awesome. Okay. So last question for you guys, housework. So housework during the workday. This is a contention that Mike and I had when I first started working from home, like back in 2000, because I had a stint where I worked from home from like 2008 until like maybe 2010. And he would be like, Monica, will you move the sprinkler? And I need you to like unload the dishwasher. And if you could please switch over the laundry. And I'm like, dude, I'm working and I'm not like functional to multitask. And when Mike works from home on Mondays and Fridays, he'll get like 20 loads of laundry done and put them away and stuff while he's having conversations with people on the phone. And I'm like, wow. So it's totally not fair. It's not. I
feel like Mike specifically could get away with that if part of your job is talking to people while you're doing stuff. Like I can't really code and fold laundry at the same time. That doesn't really work. But that was actually when Christi started working from home. She was like, you don't leave your desk ever. Because
he didn't even really take bathroom breaks. He would just sit at his desk and he didn't really realize that's what he was doing until I was like, you don't even like go for like a 10-minute walk around the house or like do anything during the day. And he's like, no, I just sit here. And he would like even eat and code at the same time. So his brain never got a chance to like step away and refresh itself.
And so I think that's a different style.
Yeah.
Because I get the same way, Tyler, because I'll sit down and my brain will just be like clicking along and solving problems. And I don't want to stop the flow because I'm going to get to the end. There's like a really process driven thing. But then like if I get stuck, then I'm going to do what Christi says, which is get up and go take the dog potty or something. So it sounds like Tyler's not doing housework. That's what I'm hearing.
I have a rule with myself. I'll change around loads of laundry and like little stuff like that. But if it takes more than like 15 minutes, it's not going to happen during the day.
What about you, Christi?
So one thing with him too is I was like, even while you're warming your lunch up in the microwave, you could be unloading the dishwasher at the same time because it's right there. Like it's just a little simple thing to keep our kitchen nice and tidy. So for me, like
it was very wifely.
Right. But like I don't do it. I think it just depends on the day and like what I have going on in the day. So I like to, like, I can cook a lunch or I can cook us lunch. Like there are some days that I cook the both of us a fresh lunch, which is really nice. And that's when he shows up like this big bowl of like deliciousness.
Mhm.
But I also like to garden during the day. So like during the summertime, we would like, and I would like, gardening's a very broad term. I'm talking like watering my plants outside or even like picking some tomatoes. So taking 15 minutes and getting some sunshine that way in the middle of the morning, stepping out and doing that. Or like if you're on a town hall, which is a big corporate thing, and then you get, like I have a town hall later today, actually. That's a great opportunity that you like listen in and you're not on video. It's more of like a big presentation type thing where you can go around and like you can do things and multitask. Some people like to take walks during those meetings.
Yeah.
But housework wise, I'm not the greatest at housework just in general. That is not a big piece of me and our relationship
that's
and how we work together.
It's normally my
Tyler
field.
finds a lot of joy and gets a lot of dopamine from doing a lot of household items. And so he does end up doing a lot of that stuff. But like cooking is one of the things I like to do, or even like sourdough. I'll get some of that going during the workday. I'll do some of the folds or the gardening is a big piece.
I think the best advice for that sort of thing though is like finding the balance point of I can do these things and still get all my work done. Like for me, that's
right.
like, it's like I'm always making sure that everything's getting done. And if it's like, well, like you said, I'm kind of stuck on this point. I could use a little break. Like, okay, now's a good time to go garden real quick.
Yeah.
Or take that afternoon walk with the dogs. I'm amazed that you said that out loud over there, Christy, because you have the dogs out there with you. She said
I
didn't go nuts.
They're sleeping, so
yeah.
It must be that time of day. Yeah. Well, I think that's good advice anyway. Like find your rhythm. For me, like I have a couple breaks during the day, but it's because I need a break mentally, not I can't just walk away from what I'm doing always and pick it right back up where I was, especially if I'm writing.
Yeah.
It could be a mess.
No. There's sometimes that I'll work till like 6 o'clock, 6:15 or so. And it's just because, and Chrissy's like, are you still working? And I'm like, I was really just in the middle of this bug and I just figured it out. So I'm done now.
Well, because you find joy in it.
Yeah, exactly.
I find joy in it. Okay, friends. So there you go. Now you have it. Now, hopefully you guys can take away from the story of Tyler and Christi, how to work from home with your spouse and manage to not go nuts, get your work done, and stay married. And hey, you know what? Mike and I, when we work from home together, it's a completely different scenario, but it works for us. And it sounds like what we're really all saying is just do what works for you, right?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
friends. So I was going to make it a goal to tell people what our next episode was going to be, but then I closed Airtable. So that's great. Actually, no, wait. Okay. So if you enjoyed this conversation with Tyler and Christi, then you can hang out with me next week because we have episodes every single week with Chris West. Chris owns West Contracting and it's a success story. He and his team got together and made some big changes over this past year that's really improved their company culture and efficiency. And he's going to talk all about that and working in a family business because he manages a 3rd generation family business. And that is a feat in and of itself. That's tricky. So join us next week for our interview with Chris West with West Contracting. And subscribe so that way you don't miss it. So until next time, go forth and market with purpose.